Like we saw in one of my previous videos, morality isn't relative. It's objective for everyone. We also saw that it needs to come from a transcendent source outside of humans. That source can only be God. But before we get into the video, I want to clear something up so there's no confusion. I'm not saying you need to believe in God to be moral or a good person. Of course, you can be a non-believer and be a good person. Much better than any believer even. But what I'm saying is that for objective moral values to exist, there needs to be a God that transcends us, that gives us that law. First, we know what is good and evil internally. It's like we have a law written in our hearts. But from our experience, we know that laws always come from lawgivers, a mind. So there must be someone who placed that law there. The only one powerful enough to do that is our Creator, God. We also know morality as a duty. A duty is something we ought to do and abide by. For example, we ought to always respect people, even if sometimes we don't feel like it. But a duty is something that needs to be assigned to us. It needs an authority. Because otherwise, who says what is right and wrong? Think of it this way. Every time someone tells us we ought not to do something, we ask, says who? Who says I can't do this? Because we need an authority to provide us with objective morality. Otherwise, it is just your opinion. And if it's just your opinion, I can have another opinion about it and do it anyway. Only God can be the ultimate authority when we say, says who? One that provides objective morality for all of humanity. But this can lead us to a problem. Let's look at a Socrates dilemma regarding God and morality. He asks the questions, is something good because God wills it? Or does God will something because it is good? But Socrates forgot to include another option. God wills something because He is good. He Himself is the standard of moral values. Something is good because it is part of His nature. This also serves as a standard that provides us a reference point in which we can know if something is good or bad. The closer something is to God's good nature, the better it is. Think about it, we use this standard all the time. We use it to judge how one thing is better or worse than another. For example, we know that helping the sick is better than murdering someone. But how do we know that? Because there's a standard in which we measure them. That standard can only be God, because it doesn't change and it is transcendent. C.S. Lewis, an author that was an atheist and later became Christian, says, the moment you say that one set of moral ideas can be better than another, you are, in fact, measuring them both by a standard, saying that one of them conforms to that standard more nearly than the other. But the standard that measures two things is something different from either. So, with everything we analyzed, only God can provide us with objective morality. But what if God doesn't exist? Well, if God doesn't exist, morality would just be a matter of human opinion. There will be no transcendent source that would determine what is right and wrong. In a moral issue, there wouldn't be a right answer, just one opinion against the other. Because without God, there can't be an objective duty to moral values. There will be no authority. If God doesn't exist, we're just accidents of nature, just highly evolved animals. But animals don't have moral duties to one another. A dog is not doing anything wrong when he gets into a fight with another dog and bites him. He's just being a dog. If God doesn't exist, we could view human behavior in the same way. There would be no real good and evil. Moral values and duties would just be an illusion to help us survive. But we know that good and evil exist. We know that something terrible like terrorism is wrong. Always, for everyone. But what about other options, like science? Science can't determine morality. In fact, quite on the contrary, Science needs morality. Albert Einstein says, "You are right in speaking of the moral foundations of science, but you cannot turn around and speak the scientific foundations of morality. Every attempt to reduce ethics to scientific formulas must fail." Science requires morality to function. Scientists must choose the ethical way in which to conduct an experiment. That's a moral choice. Also, science is descriptive. It describes reality. Morality, on the other hand, is prescriptive, meaning that it shows us how we should act. Science is what something is. Morality is what it ought to be. They are two very different things. But what if human authority tells us what is good and bad, like a government and laws? That's really dangerous, because an evil person may be in a position of power and just determine right and wrong. Think of Hitler. He was in a position of power and he determined that killing Jews was okay. But we know it isn't okay. Also, that person would be human, just like any of us. They wouldn't be an absolute authority for everyone in the world. That's what objective morality is. But what if we, as humans, just collectively determine what is right and wrong objectively? That is also really dangerous. Because if you think like that, then slavery could have been okay when the majority did it long ago. But we know that slavery was, is, and forever will be wrong, regardless of how a society views it. Just because the majority thinks something's okay, that doesn't make it okay. So, the only option available for having a transcendent, unchanging standard for objective morality is God. Otherwise, it is just a matter of human opinion. Thank you for watching!